This is the final word, India Daily, day 4 at the MCG, where India recorded a famous victory. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon with us. The last rites at Melbourne. Who knows? We might be coming back here next week. We'll talk about that in a bit. For now, Jeff, tell us how India did it in 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds, Australia resumed at 6 for 133 with a lead of 2. They just needed to bat on and try to get something of a lead. Pat Cummins and Cameron Green put on 57. They were going pretty well, but then those two got out. The last pair put on a few. They got Australia up to an even 200. They were 69 in front. Not very nice because it wasn't enough. And India ran down 70, 2 wickets down with both legs in the air, really. Just like the skeleton just going down one of those ice chutes right to the end.
It was reminiscent of the way that Rahane played. And by the way, before we go anywhere, Rahane, that's the best captaincy performance in a winning team that I've seen at the MCG in Test cricket in the time I followed cricket. I can't think of a better all-round performance from the outset. The way they employed their plans with the ball on day 1 to bowl Australia out for 195, the way that he batted through the day on day 2, the important contribution again in the field yesterday and marshalling the troops the way that he did. And just when there was a little bit of a tremor at 19 for 2, not that it was ever really in doubt chasing 70, but just as he did at Dharamshala 3 years ago when he made 38 not out and 27 balls in a short chase where they lost 2 wickets in a hurry, he said no. Authoritative pull shot off Pat Cummins straight away, played his strokes, hit through the line and made sure they would win it in a hurry and there would be no wobble. So every box was checked. I think he was just outstanding.
In that moment, I'm just remembering the Rahane pull shot because it was so good because everyone had been subject to the short ball all day. The Indian bowlers had used it against the Australian tail. The Australians were pulling it out. There were people jumping out of the way and so on. And Rahane said, okay, crunch, absolutely as much out of the middle as it could be against a pretty fearsome bowler on a pitch that had been favouring the bowlers throughout.
The last time that a visiting team won back-to-back Test matches at the MCG, so consecutive Boxing Day wins, if you like, was England in 1982 and 1986. So, I mean, everything about this, the fact that India was so far behind in this series after being all out 36 last Saturday, Kohli not being available, Mohammad Shami breaking his wrist and not being available, having to bring in a debutant in Siraj. The players they brought in, Shubman Gill, what did he finish with? 35 from 36 balls. Again, he's willing to take it to the Australians. And over the years, we've said about Indian batsmen who can take it to Australian bowling attacks are the ones that not only we respect, but invariably are the most successful. Think about the way that Lakshman and Tendulkar took Australia down at different points in the late 90s and early 2000s and Sehwag subsequently. So I think that, and Kohli, of course, in more recent times again. So I think that Gill fits into that tradition. And I'm so glad that the first time we've seen him in Test cricket was at our home ground.
Speaking of, we're in the MCC library at the moment. You'll know this if you're on the video. Just wandering around, having a look at this lovely place, all these shelves of cricketers' memoirs. Imagine having to read all of these. I mean, that's something that a judge would sentence you to as some sort of cruel and unusual punishment.
No, on the contrary, what a great... I'd cop that as a sentence. I go, what, you want to sentence me to life in the MCC library? I love it.
No, I'm saying the rest of the library is great. Just this particular section that's only cricketers' memoirs. Yeah. It's only books called My Life or A Life in Cricket.
Or My Story.
Or My Cricket Story or My Cricket Life or whatever it might be.
There are some good ones. This is my happy place. I know,
everything
David
else is
and
great.
Trev have had me in here for years in and out, working in the desks over there and in the what would you call it? They're not quite tribunes, but whatever they are, the little cubby hole over there. And I've spent so much time in here, so I'm glad that they've been able to open the doors to us today and record our final podcast of the week.
So Cameron Green, we've got to talk about him. Made 45, looked really good, mostly in that he was so calm throughout. He was batting with Pat Cummins, and for most of that first hour or so, it was just Green faces a few deliveries, finds a single, just kept it ticking over, didn't go for any sort of big shots. Started to play a couple of more authoritative shots as he went. The cut shot that he played off one knee. Have you ever seen someone go down on one knee, not for the cover drive, but for a genuine cut, not for a square drive, for a cut, because he had to get down that low to get to the ball?
It's funny you say that. I called that incorrectly on radio. I called it as a square cut because on face value, that's what it looks like, down on one knee. But as we looked at it later, the ball was fairly well high up, and that speaks to the difference that he creates, the point of difference rather that he creates being 6'7". It means that you have to bowl a different length to him, and he has shots at his disposal that other players don't necessarily have. So, 45 out. I think the over after that, he might have played a drive through mid-wicket. Lovely on drive,
He played the most perfect on drive, best shot I've seen him play, to go to 45, and then the very next ball played a pull shot.
That clothed it, didn't he?
But it almost cleared mid-wicket, and it was Jadeja who was up above his head off the ground, had to get a fair bit of elevation from a superb fielder to be able to take the catch and take the wicket. So that's...
And it's just when we were starting to believe that we might have a thriller. Like, maybe we were, maybe I'm wrong in remembering it that way. I'm not sure what the score was when Green fell, but just the way that he was batting at that exact moment, you're like, well, if he gets a run on, going through the gears, to use the old cliche, it may very well be that if he's still there in 45 minutes that he's 70 and Australia are leading by 90 or whatever it is, or whatever it may have been, and then you're into that zone of tricky chases. But 70 wasn't going to be sufficient, notwithstanding the 20-odd that Hazelwood put on at the end with Stark, wasn't it? So again, there was, for a moment, you're like, well, they could bat for an hour here. They're looking pretty solid. But in the end, Hazelwood let a ball go and hit the top of his off stump, and that was that.
I like that there's a shelf here that just says cricket. It says, oh, what a surprise to find at the MCC library. A bunch of cricket books. Yeah, cricket,
Australian football, Olympic Games, general sport over there.
Yeah, one of my favourite military leaders, general sport. But so Ashwin, I had to have a special mention for the carom ball that Ashwin bowled that hit.
Yes.
Was it Hazelwood or Stark on the pad in front of middle stump and wasn't given, but it was a beautiful bit of bowling, and umpires call on clipping the stumps. But then he also bowled the leg break a couple of times, and then he slipped in the perfect turning off spinner to bowl Josh Hazelwood and end the innings just before the extended. They took the extra half hour, and 2 minutes before that was going to run out, knocked over the top of Hazelwood's off stump.
I think part of the reason the umpires call part of DRS is generating so much attention at the moment is the audio of the clonk on television. It sounds so incongruous to have that while not outs flashing up on the screen. And that one you're referring to, where it must have been, like one of those 49% of the ball hitting. It looks like, a perfect delivery hitting the top of middle and off. The bail would have been, dislodged and flown high in the air had the ball actually hit on that angle from the delivery from Ashwin. But not to be. But that'll, as always, fill plenty of column inches, because whenever there's a DRS decision that people don't understand, they go mental.
Well, I spent a long time down in the truck yesterday with the ball tracking crew, and so I've got a fair bit of info.
That sounds like a feature to me.
Yeah, I'll be working on that in the days to come. It's an interesting story. India, though, we need to focus on this for a second.
We do.
India, a week ago, Rissold for 36, embarrassed. Captain's gone home, best batsman, best player. Lost probably their best bowler in Shami, or certainly the best Nick, the most consistent over the last few weeks. And they'd already lost. They didn't have Bhuvneshwar come over with them. They didn't have Ishant Sharma come over. So that's and then Umesh Yadav goes down injured in this test. So 4 of the 5 who were the big bowling battery, the cartel, etc., from last time that helped them win that series and gave them that bench depth, all gone. Bumrah was doing it on his own with Ashwin as support. Chiefly those two, they opened the bowling this morning. For them to come back and win in the next test and at the MCG, where it's usually hard graft, it's an extraordinary result.
Yeah, it's a fabulous performance, and I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit here, but we should have expected them to bounce back well. We shouldn't have expected this particular Indian side to roll over. I think possibly listening to what Gideon Haigh said overnight about they were able to consider 36 all out an aberration. Not every cricket team can do that. 36 all out can get into your bones and get into your blood, and that's it. It becomes who you are. It becomes the team. The team's defined by 36 all out. But I think that this Indian team are able to go, you know what? That's not us. We're not defined by one calamitous performance. More to the point, we're not defined by one extraordinary spell of bowling from Cummins complemented by Hazelwood. That's not the standard play. That's not the central case. The central case is we're a great cricket team. And the way they batted on day 2, I think as we step back from the flame a bit here, and we'll focus a lot on Australia's batting, and that's highlighted by had they scored one fewer run, they would have been all out under 200. Let me get this right: all out under 200 in 3 consecutive completed innings. And that would have been the first time that's happened in Australia since 1993. So the second innings at Adelaide, then the whacker bang bang when Curtly Ambrose went whooshka.
But to start a Test series in Australia, it would be the first time since 1901.
Right. Well, there you go. You've dug a bit deeper than I have on that. But the point stands that we're going to focus a lot on Australia's batting, and I'm sure that'll be where the debate moves to in the days to come. But India's batting. That was the focus 4 days ago. Yeah. It was what if they have to bat on Boxing Day? What if they have to face the interrogation first up at the Coliseum? What if they're 3 for... Exactly, all of that. And instead, yes, sure, they lost Agarwal early. Yeah, sure, they lost Pujara the next morning. But it all comes back to Ajinkya Rahane. I mean, I'm so thrilled that this is the man who's led this fight back with the baton and with the blade, and I think
with the bat off.
We're going to talk about this. Like I said it off the top, I reckon we're going to talk about this performance from Ajinkya Rahane forever. Yeah. We're going to see this as one of the all-time great individual Test performances. Sure, he made 112 or whatever it is, but we're going to go back and say that if not for this one individual contribution, the rest of it wouldn't have been possible. And I think for that, it should be celebrated.
Player of the day is a tough one today because there were sort of bits and pieces of performances. It wasn't everyone's whole performance. I thought Ashwin bowled really well, and when there was that sense that Green and Cummins were threatening Ashwin more than Bumrah and more than the other quicks, was the one who was making it seem like there is a wicket coming. Don't have patience, it will come, because he was the one that they were miscuing a bit and edging a bit and never quite settled against.
Yeah, I'm just looking through my notes here, and I suppose you can make a case for Siraj picking up Green then Lyon, but I think Gill, for mine, also makes a case because of the way he batted. Short chase, not going to last long, but coming out and striking through the line, on debut, all the other bits and pieces there. Ashwin for the long spell, 16 overs on the reel from the Great Southern Stand down, just to make sure. I mean, the scoring rate, one more bit of trivia for you there. It's the slowest Australia has batted in an innings which has gone to the second new ball. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. It's the second slowest Australia's batted in an innings where they've seen the second new ball this century. So they batted marginally slower at Kandy in 2016, but that's when they were batting out for a draw. This wasn't the case here. So, given
what a game! I remember that game.
Yeah, the Steve O'Keefe
8 for 161. I still remember the score. It was 8 for 161 for about 40 overs when they were just blocking. There was the partnership between O'Keefe and Neville that was worth 4 runs from about 150 balls, and the 4 was an accidental, an inside edge from Steve O'Keefe that went to find leg.
Well, this was alongside that in terms of runs per over scored by Australia, and that's because of Ashwin. Yeah. So Ashwin was the one that put the brakes on, and the brakes were already on, but he made sure they never came off. Bowling in partnership in tandem with Jadeja.
He rusted the brakes together, so they could never be released.
He fused them together, and Jadeja as well before the second new ball was taken, and then obviously Bumrah comes back, and we know what flows from that. But I suppose there's a case for a number of players, but I'm half inclined to give it to Rahane just because at the end of the day, he's the bloke collecting the cheque for man of the match.
Yeah, I think I'd go with that also because, as you said, he walked out at 2 for 19 where, if he'd gone then they might have started to soil themselves in, Tim Payne Old Trafford style, and he's the one who made sure that didn't happen.
We also didn't mention that Nathan Lyon was on a hat-trick there, which, if not for the fact that it flashed up on the scoreboard, I knew, and helpfully I was on commentary. There's no way I was missing that moment, given my history with hat-tricks. But I'm not sure whether they necessarily twigged. So they set their field, then the message went up on the scoreboard, then they reset their field. But anyway, that didn't happen. Of course it didn't happen because I'm here.
And he did have a catch missed in the deep Mitchell Starc coming around and dived towards the end, and Lyon could have snagged another cheapie. But, if you took a hat-trick at that point where it was like they need 20 to win and they're going to knock you off in a Test match where they've embarrassed your team, it'd be a pretty shit hat-trick to remember, wouldn't it? You wouldn't be like, remember his hat-trick,
It's like his 300th Test wicket. Remember Lyon's 300th Test wicket was the day after the sandpaper for
it was. Exactly that.
And hardly celebrated.
And also, if you talk about Peter Siddle's hat-trick, you never talk about the day after that or the day after that. We don't go on. It stops there. We've got the Hall of Fame in the second half. Have we got anything else to deal with in the first half?
I think I'm at peace with having covered the day sufficiently, Jeff.
There we go. We'll be back in just a sec.
All right. We have Hall of Fame, which, as you probably know, watching these, we tend to talk about Hall of Fame beforehand. I've just ruined my Hall of Fame by talking about Nathan Lyon's hat-trick ball. I just got ahead of the curve there.
Well, you can
It'll
do it
happen.
again.
I might.
All right.
I'll reboot. This is the Final Word India Daily, Day 4 MCG. We're in the MCC Library. Adam Collins, Geoff Lemon. We have a CBUS Super Hall of Fame member to induct, Geoff Lemon.
Yeah, well, a Hall of Fame event, incident, artefact.
Yes.
Ravindra Jadeja's lovely hair is starting to become a Hall of Fame contender every
Fluffy.
time he comes in. Well, Bharat Sundaresan says that Jadeja's, he wants to grow it, and he hasn't had the patience to grow it long yet. He keeps cutting it off because he gets sick of this boofy phase.
Right.
And this time he's determined to push through.
The awkward phase. Remember in high school, I mean, you probably had long hair in high school as well.
Yep.
There was short hair, there was long hair, there was in-between hair.
Yeah, where it just goes sideways.
No one likes that.
No one likes sideways.
And that's where Jadeja is at the moment.
Yeah, and a lot of people are looking at him. So, but that's a sort of ongoing Hall of Fame consideration. I think for me, it was the fact that Cheteshwar Pujara, the accountant of Test cricket, the most mild-mannered gentleman of all, absolutely cracked it when he got out.
Oh, did he?
Because he played at a wide ball. He was furious at himself. He played at a wide ball from Pat Cummins and nicked it, and he walked a few strides over towards point and then kicked to the ground in a big dramatic Michael Holding kind of kicking the stumps out sort of thing. And then he stomped off, and when he got to the boundary rope, he clobbered it with his bat. Just gave it a big wallop and then stormed down the race. And I was like, angry Pujara. I didn't know that could happen, but it can. Angry Pujara, that's my nomination.
I would have thought that Mayank Agarwal would have been angrier yet again for going at a wide one when he's made in the Test series so far 17, 9, 0 and 5, and will probably lose his spot next week to Rohit Sharma.
Rohit Sharma's coming in.
Who would have
better
thought
get
with
this party
Agarwal
started.
on the way into the series, Agarwal, other than Virat Kohli, was our most consistent player. Two tests and you're out. See you, champ.
Yeah, it's been quick turnarounds for a lot of Indian players. Prithvi Shaw, okay, 2 knocks, see you later.
Enjoy hotel quarantine.
Yeah, enjoy hotel queue. There's not much to throw forward too because we don't know where the test is going to be. We sort of know when it's going to be, but I suppose
that's going to be. Well, the CA have said it'll be January 7. It's whether they take us all to New South Wales in, I gather from the reporting, in a bubble, and that bubble in turn goes to Queensland after having spent 2 weeks in hotel queue. That would be challenging. Can you get divorced preemptively? We're not married yet, Rach and I, but we might get. That might be the consequence if they take it to Sydney, and that's what we have to do. Anyway, realistically, they were rolling. This might be a Hall of Fame contender. They were rolling the pitch at lunch for the next Test match here. I love that.
Very nice.
I love the idea of getting ahead of it and sort of like they're preparing that track. They've had a pitch agreed with the ICC, and we've had a number of texts on our feedback saying, "Oh, I've been asked to work next week." I love that. It's like WhatsApp's being screenshotted during trade week or whatever. You kind of get these little kernels of information, whether they're true or not. Who really cares?
What has Tom Brown got to say about it? What does he understand? What's he being led to believe? There's a strong possibility that it might be a great fit for the Western Bulldogs. The third test.
Yeah, but he thinks Donald Trump is a supreme retail politician. That's for sure.
That's true. He's definitely
some other shit.
He's definitely got a lot of money to come in. So look, I think that's it, isn't it?
I think we've done everything we need to do, Geoff. This has been the India Daily. It's been the 4th day of it at the MCG. If you like what we do on the Final Word, we're going to have our New Year's special, our end of 2020 special on the 31st, as is the custom.
Yep.
So we'll be recording that in the next couple of days. We do our awards and so on.
Best of, worst of,
best of, worst of.
That's all on a regular podcast feed, so you can just find the Final Word Cricket Podcast on your app of choice and subscribe to the feed. Or if you're watching it on the video, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Isn't it lovely? I mean, I know we're being filmed right now as we say this, but we've been walking around the library. So if you're listening to the pod and want to watch it back, we've been walking through the aisles of the library as we've been doing this, and the video yesterday was just stunning, like with all the long wide shots of the G and us really tiny in the corner at different points. And Cam's a genius, so if you want to see what he's been doing for us, hopefully he'll be with us again next week at the MCG. Time will tell, but subscribe to the YouTube page and you'll be able to get notified whenever our podcast goes on the video feed.
And if you want to support the show, it's patreon.com/thefinalword. That's how we do it. It's been the India Daily. We'll see you for the third test, wherever that is, or you'll hear us. We'll be
a number of times between now and then.
We can't say that we'll see you. But anyway, New Year's, other things.
Story time as well coming up next week.
Keep an eye on the feed, and we'll be back with the India Daily for the third test from somewhere.
Bye.